Hey folks, this is International Master David Pruess for Chess.com, and today I am delighted to be doing a feature on the greatest chess player of all time, Garry Kasparov, who also happens to be my chess role model, not necessarily life role model, that's two different things, but the most incredible chess player ever and a real inspiration to me with his chess. Of course, whenever you talk about the best ever, there are people with different opinions, so I'm doing this video, and it's my opinion that he's best. Garry Kasparov has some possible evidence of the fact that he's best. For example, the highest rating ever. He was rated 2,851, and also the most months as the number one rated player. He was the number one rated player from 1986 to 2005, consecutively, 20 entire years, and a total of more than 250 months in his career. So yeah, those are some good evidences. Another is that he has the longest streak ever of first or tied first places in professional tournaments, of 15 serious tournaments. And he also became the youngest world champion ever at the age of 22 after an epic battle with Anatoly Karpov. Now, look at this picture of Garry that I'm showing you and realize what is so amazing about this picture. This is Garry Kasparov at age 17 at his first Olympiad representing the Soviet Union. He was the youngest player ever to represent the Soviet Union at the time. This was 1 year before he would start his streak of winning every single event he played in for a decade. Okay, so he was only 17. He was 1 year away from starting this streak. And what I see in this picture is just an incredible amount of energy and sort of intensity and knowledge about chess. You see that the game hasn't yet started, but he's staring so deeply into the center of this board. And when I see that, I see all this energy waiting to be unleashed in the next 10 years of just nonstop, brutal, decisive chess games. He didn't quite torch everyone the way Fischer did at his peak, winning candidates matches with scores of 6-0, but I think that Kasparov's opposition was a lot stronger. So in any case, that's Garry right before he started his streak and before he became the number one player in the world. And now let's turn to the chessboard and see one great example of his proficiency as a chess player. This game here is not his most famous game, nor necessarily his best game. It's just one which I feel is really representative of what's great about his play. So he's playing white here against Grandmaster Nigel Short, who once challenged him in a match for the World Championship, although this game is not from their World Championship match. And they're playing a main line of the Nimzo-Indian defense. And this is a line here that Garry Kasparov was great at playing. He played many good games, or several good games in this line, several which I remember, including an epic one against Anatoly Karpov for the World Championship. Also a good one against Anand. So in this position, white has a weak c-pawn, and as compensation for it, he has a nice bishop pair. And sometimes black has trouble developing the queen side because of the pressure along this diagonal. And this is a variation which I also play a lot to this day, and that's because of Garry, of course. So the game develops a little bit further. And now you see Garry is going to start seizing the initiative. And that is one of the things that really distinguishes his chess from the best chess that was played before he came along. He really showed how to use the initiative in incredible ways. So here he starts off the wildness with this pawn sacrifice c4, getting rid of the weak pawn before black can put a knight on b6 and then c4. He fills that square with the black queen with a pawn sack, and he doesn't have any tactical follow-up. He just defends his knight, and he castles. And now Nigel Short plays h6. And here, Garry continues to build on his initiative. See, he can't have predicted everything that was going to happen in this game when he played knight b5 and c4, sacking the pawn. Even the greatest player in the world couldn't have predicted when playing knight b5 and c4, sacking a pawn, the intricate way in which every single thread in this game would lead, 20 moves down the road with these kind of sacrifices. But he was strong enough to have the feeling for doing that. of knowing when to go for something like this, when to say, like, yeah, I can give up a pawn just to keep the black knight out of c4, and, you know, stuff will keep coming. And if he challenges my dark squared bishop, as black does here with h6, and the bishop has no good square, right, because he doesn't want to trade it for this knight, to know that, you know, probably I'll have bishop takes h6 in this kind of position once he gets here, to see how he might be able to follow up bishop takes h6. So anyway, bishop takes h6 itself could be sort of a stock chess theme, right, where you give up 2 pawns, get your queen near the opponent's king. But note he's already given up 1 pawn, so he won't have much comp for the piece, and how he executes this is also very important. The next move has to be e4, cutting the black queen off from the king side. So black moves the knight to e7, because if it goes to f6, then after queen h6, the knight won't be solid on f6, right? It'll be hanging and hard to support it there. So e4, knight goes to e7. Now another important move, kicks the queen with his rook while it's here. So the black queen goes off to a bad square, and the white queen comes into the black king. Okay, but still not clear what white's decisive attack will be. And now he follows up with a rook lift, threatening rook g5 and rook h5. Black defends, swings the rook over. Queen c2. Now, of course, he could sack his rook for the knight and get a draw by perpetual check. And good players often like to know, if they're sacrificing a lot of material, that they have at least a perpetual check. That way, if they're calculating for a win and they can't find it, they can say, like, oh, shoot, that doesn't work, and just at least get a draw still. But Garry goes for more. He brings his knight back, defending the rook and chasing the queen. The queen attacks the knight, and now he brings a new piece to attack on the king side. Just wave after wave of attack. And here he comes. And the black queen comes back, and now another incredible move from Garry, e5. He doesn't take the knight with his pawn because it'll let the queen over to defend. Instead, he first adds his bishop to the game. And black defends, and he brings his bishop in. And here he gets back one of the 2 pieces that he's sacrificed, and he still has 1 extra pawn for it and continuing attack against the black king. This is where Nigel Short could have defended pretty well with bishop c6. So it's not the greatest game ever. I'm not claiming that it is, but it's still really representative of Garry's incredible style of just pushing, pushing, pushing. So here, queen h7 check is a great move, and that's why black needed to move the bishop off the back rank, so that in this position white wouldn't have checkmate in the endgame. So queen h7 check is played. Nigel has to move his king, and now he comes back here. And the point is to attack with rook to h5. Even this is hard to see how it's working, but by now I'm sure Garry was able to calculate everything. He arranges this rook trade, and then his last piece, the rook, manages to participate from the other side of the board. And after the knight blocks, he trades. The rook can't take because it would open up the attack of white's queen on e7, right? So he takes with his queen. And now he swings his queen over to the other side of the board as well. These are just the kind of moves that are really hard to predict, but I'm sure Garry calculated all of these. And here the game ended because he is simply going to checkmate black. Black resigned here, but the game will end with rook check, rook blocks, and queen h4. And amazing how his pieces swung all around the board, right? So, the things that we can take from Garry's play: dynamic, being willing to sack material, seeing what the tension is in the position and following it all the way through from move 5 or 10 in a game all the way to move 40 or 50, seeing the entire board and swinging your pieces around and calculating like a beast. Garry Kasparov, the greatest ever. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you around on Chess.com.